If you are enjoying the Division 2 Title 15 update, you no doubt have looked at the expertise system and thought, what an unholy grind some things, especially the unique items and skills, are going to be. In this video, we're going to review your best options to quickly farm proficiency levels, while also going over the pros and cons of doing each method. Now, if you take a quick look at the tutorial tab and find expertise, it will tell you that proficiency is gained from combat experience on the items you have equipped. For those that do not know, it is also based on the number of related items equipped. If you have two of the same weapons equipped, they gain XP together, which is why if you run a 4-piece gear set, it will level up a lot quicker than if you're just running a different piece in each slot. Now, the biggest thing to understand is that combat XP is not reward or completion XP. So doing 5 directive control points on heroic, or summit floor 10 with 10 directives on challenging, may not be the best option for you. Combat XP is the XP you earn when you or an ally kill an enemy, which means our main goal is basically just to kill enemies as fast as possible. And from my testing, it does not really matter how many directives you have equipped. It does not affect the actual amount gained in terms of combat XP. The difficulty also does not matter much, and that is basically just because difficulty doesn't change the amount of XP that you get per enemy. However, the color of the enemy does. Reds, for example, give about 220 XP, purples give about 264, and I think yellows give about 330. So heroic can result in more yellows and more XP per enemy, but heroic also means that the enemies have a larger health pool and is going to take longer to kill them, which decreases the actual value that you're going to get out of each kill, basically. So this pretty much means that the faster you kill enemies, the faster you can level something like skill expertise, or any expertise for that matter. Now, I tested out a few methods, and to be fair, this doesn't necessarily include the amount of experience that you would get from something like donations. So if you factor in donations specifically at one specific thing, you could probably level that up faster, than just any given method by itself. But a lot of the methods generally involve you getting some sort of materials or some sort of gear that you can deconstruct for something to invest into a specific thing. So while there may be some areas that may be great for donations specifically, I want to look at just the amount of XP that you gain for everything that you have equipped. If, for example, we decided that we wanted to cheese farm the level 10 summit boss for a couple of hours nonstop, while we may get a lot of SHD levels, or we may get the season ranks really fast, and in my case, it's kind of what I did. It took about 4 grueling hours to go from 37 to like 90, but it is also pretty much one of the most boring and soul-consuming ways to actually grind in this game. And with this, I did grind out some skill levels, but it wasn't very many. I think it was maybe 4 levels out of this entire time period, and of course, I could use the extra resources like I already talked about for the deconstruction of, the gear sets or the targeted mods or whatever, to boost that XP. But, even with that, you're still looking at many, many hours of grinding for proficiency on something like skills. Plus, most of the really fast XP gains depended a lot on using the actual fire starter. So if you tried a DPS build or even a tank build, you're likely going to take a lot longer to get this XP. Your XP per minute basically is going to be a lot slower. And most likely you're going to be stuck using the exact same weapons or the exact same armor over and over again. And in the end, I would say it's basically the best option for SHD and season rank, but using it to grind proficiency specifically is a little bit slower and rather soul crushing. And another thing I actually used to test out the expertise grind with was the actual noob mode countdown. And it does actually work pretty well. A large part of that is just due to the insane amount of loot that you can get by doing a run successfully, which of course helps with donations, and that's all, well and good. But one of the problems that I've noticed with just experience in general, or at least the combat experience, is that most people are using generally one kind of build. And that's some sort of DPS or hybrid DPS tank type build. So unless you're really diversifying all of your builds and just making every random build some sort of DPS, whether it's actually effective or designed for that or whatever, I mean, you're basically going to level up one build and probably try to have to make a completely new build to level things up, and it's just going to be slow. I mean, if you have a 4-piece gear set, you're going to level that up really quickly. But if you have something like Contractors, Fox's Prayer, Cheska, Grupo, whatever, just one individual piece in each slot, it's going to take an incredibly long time to just grind that out from the combat expertise. Generally speaking, you're going to be looking at about 30k XP per skill per run. And with each proficiency level being about 88,000, a run of Countdown taking about 20 minutes from matchmaking to actual completion, you're basically looking at one level per skill per hour. So in total, you would still need to grind about 10 hours straight to max 2 skills. And that's, again, not counting donations, which would speed that up, but still, you're looking at a very large time sink. Plus, you're still going to be limited to a small selection of gear and skills, like I already talked about. But of course, being designed for an 8-man team, you can also encounter a lot of other bumps in the road. Anything from leaders forgetting to actually start the match, or players just constantly getting disconnected and taking longer to complete the objectives if you actually complete them. I mean, there's a lot more problems that come with doing an 8-man event than just doing something solo over and over again. But I mean, of course, if you have a team, a dedicated raid team with 7 other players, then you are going to obviously perform better than average on that, and maybe you can reduce that time to actually get through Countdown to like 15 minutes, and of course that would just increase the amount of total XP you get per minute, which would just be more helpful. But like I said at the start, Combat XP does not really care about the difficulty that you're playing on or the amount of directives that you have active. You just really want to fight enemies with the least amount of health and in constant waves, which means that putting your world map on normal and running control points, territory control, resource convoys, elite patrols, public executions, or even normal level missions without any directives at all will give you pretty good combat XP, and almost as quick, if not faster, than the other methods that I tested. And from that testing, regardless of what build you're running, you can pretty much expect about 1600 XP per open world event on normal. And that only takes about 30 seconds. I mean, you can easily take out resource convoys or public executions or territory controls extremely quickly and get a good amount of XP per second. Of course, there are some builds that are going to take a little bit longer, but it doesn't really seem to matter that much, at least on normal. I mean, any style can really rip through these events. You can use a skill build with, weapons, right? It's the enemies have low enough health that a skill build can do DPS, especially if you're using something like the capacitor and just want to level up your armor. You can equip that capacitor and do a huge amount of damage for basically a normal level enemy. But again, an even better source for enemy waves comes from actually speed running normal missions and control points. Now, depending on your time to kill, they can actually result in a very huge range of different XPs. I have seen pretty much, everything from about 2,000 XP per minute to over 4,500 expertise per minute. And this generally would result in you earning a proficiency in about 45 minutes or less. Now, that doesn't include the donation made from materials. Again, I'm not including that in everything. But generally speaking, you're not getting so many more materials from one specific activity over another in the same amount of time period. That makes any one of them vastly different. Yeah, if you want to go by donations alone, period, I'd probably say Countdown. But again, you're getting a lot from pretty much every activity. Enemies drop materials themselves, so the more you kill, the more materials you can get, the more loot chests you can get, the more rewards you get. Obviously, that all goes into how many materials you can get as well. But if you did happen to have, like, let's say 3 friends or something, you're blowing through this normal level content even quicker. I mean, obviously, Countdown is limited to heroic difficulty, right? So you need those 8 players. So you can't really do too much to game the system. But adding 3 players to your group, blowing through all of the different open world events quickly and efficiently, having somebody staged at the control points so that they can just take out the ads as they come out the doors, having somebody staged at the other defend the control point spawn points so that they can just take out the ones that are coming for you at the very end. I mean, you can stage it so that it's very quick and very easy for each control point, and that can move a lot quicker and a lot more efficiently than you can with some of the other stuff. Now, if you actually get good at some of these normal difficulty control points, I mean, you can literally do them in under a minute and a half. And that's going to give me about 6,800 XP, right? When you break that down, you're looking at a good deal of XP per minute. And of course, you've also got some missions that you can run in, under 6 minutes. I mean, maybe even 5 minutes, or I think there's some leaderboards that, have them under 4 minutes. I think there's like, some of them that are like 3:30 or something like that. And I don't know if those are all from the cheeses way back when, but I have personally gotten them, in the like 5 minute and 30-second range. But, regardless of how long it takes, you're going to be getting about 18,000 XP. So the quicker you can get it done, the more XP you're going to actually get per minute. And if you do manage to hit, 6 minutes, that's still 3,000 XP a minute just from doing these normal missions. But as we've been talking about this entire time, each farming method has its own merits. Level 10 Summit will give you some of the best season rank rewards, and it will give you, pretty good targeted loot for resources, but it does kind of suck for proficiency, and it mostly favors the use of, like burn builds. So if you're not really into status effects, it's going to not be as quick for you as some other builds. And it's not to say you can't do it, but of course, since this is all dependent on being efficient and being as fast as possible, level 10 Summit is generally designed to favor a mixed group or somebody soloing with status effects. Now, Countdown gives you a large amount of loot, definitely a large amount of loot, and some of that loot is actually, pretty good to use if you're looking for it. Or, of course, it just gives you a large amount of loot in case you just want to deconstruct it all for donations. And it's probably just one of the best loot farms, I think, at this point in the game. But it's not the greatest for farming proficiency. And season rank itself is also going to be pretty slow. And obviously this mostly favors DPS or hybrid DPS type tank builds. So I mean, you can kind of see if you're a skill build using status effects, you probably want to go to Summit. If you're a DPS build or, a hybrid DPS tank build, Countdown might be the best method. But if we look at running on normal, we're going to see that large amount of expertise quickly and repeatedly through a huge variety of different content, and we're going to be able to pretty much use any build we want. We're not going to be limited to, a very specific build, and that's it. Because one of the things that many of you are probably going to be discovering here is that to get those expertise ranks, to actually level up all your stuff, you need to be proficient in pretty much a huge assortment of everything, right? If you just say, well, I'm not a skill build, I'm not using skill equipment, I'm not using skills, I'm not using any of this stuff, I don't care about leveling them up, well, guess what? Your DPS builds are not going to be able to be maxed out. You're not going to get to, level 20 expertise on your Fenris because you can't, because it just doesn't let you, it doesn't work like that. You have to level up enough things to be able to build your expertise cap higher. So you're going to have to eventually, at some point, level up everything. And of course, this is going to lead into kind of like the last little tips that I have for you. And that's pretty simple. Just experiment with other things that are out there, right? I mean, there's plenty of things to grind, and you may find something that you like to do more than something else. For example, on challenging, I haven't really talked about challenging difficulty, but the emergency bunker mission on challenging, right at the beginning of that mission, there is a group of enemies that you can farm pretty quickly. And obviously, once you clear out those enemies in the hallway, more spawn from that little side room. And that it becomes a great combat XP farm. But if you did it on like normal or hard, of course the enemies are easier and you can kill them faster, but the wave that comes out of that back room is a lot less. So depending on your build, depending on your preference, depending on what you're doing, some farm like that may be really good for you, farming it on challenging, while if you're using a different build, it may not be the best for you. I mean, again, you have to test these things out for yourself. You have to kind of figure out what is your style, what is good for your build, especially the build that you're working on. Like we talked about, If you are working on a skill build, maybe Summit's going to be really good for you. But if you're working on a DPS build, maybe it's Countdown. If you're working on a tank build, maybe fighting these lower difficulty enemies in normal mode across, these control points or these open world events, maybe that is going to be best for you. You have to kind of keep in mind what is the best for your specific build, what are you trying to do specifically, and that will help you to determine what event or what farm you are going to want to take part in. And in the end, it just depends on what you want the most, maybe how much time you actually want to soak up into any one activity. But anyway, that's basically the tips that I have for you. Test out different methods, find out what's best for you. Those three that I named are pretty much the best, most popular methods. There's some variety in there that you could do, changing up the difficulty, changing the location, whatever you want. But hopefully that helps. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.